Most people think boundary problems are loud. Someone yells, disrespects you, crosses a clear line. But that's not how it usually starts. Most of the time, it's quiet, it's confusing, and it leaves you wondering if you're just being too sensitive. If you've ever felt that subtle discomfort, like something is off but you can't quite explain why, this is for you. Boundary testing rarely shows up as one big moment. It shows up in small behaviors that slowly repeat. The problem isn't that you're weak or bad at confrontation. It's that you haven't been taught what to look for. Once you see the patterns, everything changes. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 clear signs someone may be testing your boundaries, so you can recognize them early and respond with calm, quiet confidence instead of doubt. When people hear boundary testing, they imagine someone doing something obviously wrong. But that's not what this is really about. Boundary testing is rarely a single moment. It's a pattern, small actions that repeat, especially after you've shown where your limits are. Most people react to these moments emotionally. They explain too much, they get frustrated, or they ignore the feeling and hope it goes away. Calm, confident people do something different. They don't rush. They don't explode. They watch what happens next. And here's the good news. This has nothing to do with being tough, confrontational, or perfectly confident. You don't need the right words or the right tone. You just need clarity. That's why we're focusing on 5 specific signs. Not to judge anyone, but to help you see what's actually happening. Once you recognize the pattern, responding becomes much simpler and a lot less stressful. The first sign someone may be testing your boundaries is when they ignore small limits and act like it's no big deal. Maybe you say you can't stay late, and they still linger. Or you mention you're busy, and they keep asking for just one quick favor. Nothing dramatic happens, but something feels off. Most people brush this off. They tell themselves it's not worth making a thing out of it. Or they over-explain, giving long reasons for why they can't help, hoping the other person will finally understand. Calm, confident people do something quieter. They notice the pattern. They pause, and they adjust their response. They might restate the limit once, or they might simply stop engaging in the moment. This works because boundaries don't need intensity to be real. They need consistency. When you don't reward small pushes with extra energy, you send a clear signal. The emotional payoff is simple but powerful. You start trusting yourself again, and your sense of control stays calm instead of tense. Another common sign people don't notice is when someone keeps pushing just a little after you've already said no. You might decline plans because you're tired, and they respond with, "Come on, just for a bit." Or at work, you say you can't take on more, and they ask if you can at least help with this one thing. Most people soften their no in these moments. They add explanations. They compromise their own limits to avoid feeling guilty or disappointing someone else. Calm, confident people handle this differently. They don't argue. They don't justify. They calmly repeat their no, or they disengage from the conversation altogether. Sometimes that means changing the subject. Sometimes it means stepping away. This works because consistency teaches others how to treat you. When your no stays steady, the pushing usually stops. The emotional payoff is clarity. You stop feeling torn or guilty, and your decisions start feeling clean, simple, and grounded. One of the clearest shifts happens when someone jokes about your limits or downplays them. Maybe it's a family member who laughs and says, "You're so dramatic," when you ask for space. Or a friend who teases you for leaving early, like it's a funny personality flaw instead of a choice you made. Most people laugh along in these moments. They don't want to seem sensitive or ruin the mood, so they smile, brush it off, and let the comment slide. Calm, confident people don't reward that behavior. They don't argue or snap back. They simply don't play along. Sometimes that means not laughing. Sometimes it means changing the subject or letting the moment pass without feeding it. This works because joking only works when it gets a reaction. When there's no payoff, the behavior usually fades. The emotional payoff is inner steadiness. You stop feeling shaken or self-conscious, and you stay grounded in your own choices without needing approval. Something else that often gets missed is how someone reacts when you finally start enforcing your boundaries. You say no more clearly or you stop explaining, and suddenly they seem hurt, distant, or even a little irritated. They might guilt you, blame you, or go quiet in a way that makes you feel responsible. Most people backtrack here. They rush to smooth things over. They explain again. They bend just to bring the mood back to normal. Calm, confident people do something uncomfortable but important. They let that discomfort exist. They don't chase the other person's emotions or try to fix them right away. This works because emotional reactions are information. They show you that the boundary mattered and that the dynamic is changing. The emotional payoff is freedom. You stop managing other people's feelings at the expense of your own, and people-pleasing slowly loses its grip on you. Finally, one of the most important signs to recognize is when someone only respects your boundaries after there's a consequence. At work, this might look like a coworker who keeps interrupting you until you stop responding right away. Or in a relationship, someone ignores your need for space until you actually take a step back. Most people hope things will change on their own. They restate the boundary again and again, waiting for the other person to finally get it. Calm, confident people do something more effective. They change their access, their energy, or their availability, not as punishment, but as alignment. If the behavior doesn't change, the dynamic does. This works because boundaries without action don't hold. Words explain, but actions teach. The emotional payoff is trust in yourself. You stop feeling helpless or stuck, and you start knowing, deep down, that you can protect your time, energy, and peace without drama. When you look at all 5 signs together, a clear pattern starts to show. None of them are about yelling, threatening, or proving a point. They're about awareness, about noticing what happens after you set a limit, not how perfectly you say it. A calm, grounded person doesn't live in reaction mode. They don't argue every time something feels off, and they don't over-explain to earn understanding. They observe, they choose, and they adjust. Boundaries aren't a speech you give. They're a signal you send through consistent behavior. The more steady you are, the clearer that signal becomes. This is what quiet confidence really looks like. Not loud, not defensive, not tense. Just clear. When you stop trying to control how others respond and focus on how you respond, your sense of stability grows. You move from reacting out of fear to choosing from self-respect. If there's one thing to take from this, it's this. You don't need to fix everything at once. Choose just one of these signs to pay attention to this week. Not 5. Just 1. That's how real change sticks. Maybe you notice when someone pushes after you've said no. Or maybe it's how they react when you stop explaining. Don't judge it. Just notice it. Awareness alone already shifts your behavior. Starting small works because it builds trust with yourself. You prove that you can stay calm, clear, and steady without forcing anything. After a few days, ask yourself one simple question. How did it feel to respond differently, even in a small way? If this helped you see things more clearly, give the video a like. Subscribe if you want more calm, practical tools like this. And let me know in the comments which sign stood out to you. This isn't about becoming harder. It's about becoming steadier, and that's something you build over time.